Welcome to Moments with Marianne. This is your host, Marianne Pastana. And we're here today with special guest, Risa Williams, who's here to share with us her new book, Get Stuff Done Without the Stress. 5 Secrets for Making the Best Use of Your Time and Achieving Your Goals for Greater Happiness. So are you feeling overwhelmed by your to-do list and would like to just stop stressing? Well, today's guest is here to share with us just that. So Risa Williams is an author, psychotherapist, psychology professor, and time management consultant. She's the author of 5 self-help books, including Get Stuff Done Without the Stress, The Procrastination Playbook, The Ultimate Anxiety Toolkit, The Ultimate Self-Esteem Toolkit, and The Ultimate Time Management Toolkit. She's also the host of the Motivation Mindset podcast, which features organizational tools. She's been featured in Forbes Magazine, Business Insider, Parade Magazine, and Real Simple. So welcome to the show, Risa Williams.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Oh my gosh, I am so looking forward to this discussion and especially talking about how we can get stuff done without the stress. I mean, everyone's stressing nowadays.
So true, right?
Oh my goodness. So what even inspired you to write this book?
So I'm a therapist and book author. I've been writing books about time management for the last 5 years. My last one was about procrastination, and the one before that was about everyday time management tools that people could use to do everyday types of tasks. But the one issue that kept coming up that I kept hearing clients talk about was burnout. People are feeling more burnt out than ever right now, and stress is at such a high level, just nationwide, and it hasn't come down since the pandemic. So I was hearing from clients, I'm so burnt out. I never feel done with anything on my to-do list. I keep doing big things, but I don't emotionally ever feel done. So I wanted to address that. And my book asks people to redefine productivity for themselves in a healthier way, one that prioritizes our own well-being and happiness and balance a little bit more, and making that our own goal as we move forward with other things we want to do.
Well, I think your book is timely regardless when it's written because everyone's so stressed out. There's so much going on. And one thing you talk about in your book that I was really intrigued by, you talk about toxic productivity. And I'd
Yeah.
love for you to share that with our listeners.
So I'm trying to introduce this term, this idea that sometimes in this hustle culture, we get caught up in toxic productivity tendencies that we may be adopting on an unconscious level and never really examining, that can make us feel really bad and off balance. So some of these ideas are that our output means more than our worth. You know, our worth is dependent on how much we're putting out there, how much work we're doing. And this go, 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 rush, 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 we have to hit one milestone after another without taking into consideration how we feel when we're doing those things and how we feel about ourselves and what we've just done. So I'm trying to shift people over into what I call a self-kindness mindset, which is a different approach towards our time and goals that takes our well-being into account. That's more about how do you feel about the things you're doing? Can you let yourself rest? Can you let yourself take breaks? Can you let yourself experiment with things and see all that as productive for your own health and well-being?
That's such a big piece. Where do you think people get stuck the most?
I think people are in a mindset where they're comparing themselves a lot to what they think other people are doing. And we have misconceptions about what other people are doing, you know, partially from social media, partially from things people post about. But also, we don't always take into consideration how much stress everyone else is under. And then we don't really get honest with ourselves about how much stress we're under. So, where I see people getting really tipped off balance is they're thinking they have to accomplish all this stuff, and they're putting themselves in such a chronic state of stress. And then they're not getting really honest with themselves about how stressed out am I right now? What am I feeling? How does my body feel? How does my brain feel? What do I need more of to stay more in balance in different areas of my life? And also, I think people tend to tip themselves over into toxic productivity because they get so hyper focused on one area of their life that they're trying to rush ahead in, that the other areas of their life kind of fall to the wayside and descend into chaos sometimes, while we're working on one goal in particular.
So we've talked about toxic productivity. Is there a healthy productivity as well?
So, my version of that would be to learn to be kinder to yourself overall. I call it a self kindness mindset. This would be a way to adopt a healthier outlook on how you're approaching your time and your goals. So, be kinder to yourself, break things down into tinier steps, make it easier on your own brain and body, do regular check-ins more where you're regulating yourself or you're feeling where you're getting off balance with things, and then look at your own time and energy as precious and valuable and also limited, right? Because if we accept that we only have a certain amount of time and energy, we'll make different choices with what we're choosing to add on. So I give this analogy of the time wardrobe. I want you to picture your weekly schedule like a closet. And if it's stuffed full of things, no organizational method is going to work that well for so long if there's just way too much stuff in there. But if we think of our time like that and we get a little more choosy about what we're putting in our schedule each week, and we align it more with things that bring us happiness, that bring us well-being, and things that we value, and we treasure those things a little bit more, we can get a little clearer about what we're saying yes to and what we're saying no to, and things that we're making important in our time and things that we can maybe, get rid of in our schedule to clear out that clutter a little so we can focus on what's more important to us to do each week.
I like that analogy. That really makes it simple.
Yeah.
If you're seeing like your dog and your parents coming, say, oh, they're kind of being maybe stuffed in the closet trying to get out. there's a
Right.
there's a lot there to unpack.
Yeah. And I like to compartmentalize things because what I think a lot of us do is we have a pretty rigid schedule for our work life. Most of us have jobs that are pretty regimented, right? Like we have meetings and deadlines, and it's from 9 to 5 each day or a certain amount of time each day, and it's already slotted in our calendar. But then we have free time, which can be this amorphous thing that lives in our heads that we try to wing it with all the time. And we're shoving a lot of things into that free time box, as I see it. So if we see them as boxes, right, like physical boxes, your work box is pretty organized most of the time. But free time, you're trying to shove errands in there, maybe managing your kids, creative stuff, socialization, all this stuff into your free time box that is unorganized and sort of just a blob that we're seeing that we're going to do at some point in the week. But that's a lot of pressure to put on yourself. And you're maybe putting way too much stuff in there that you actually don't have the hours to do all of it or the energy to do all those things. So we need to get a little more honest with ourselves. It's a way of being kinder to ourselves and looking at that more logically and saying, well, how much stuff am I planning to do with my free time? Is that possible? Is that reasonable? Am I being kind to myself, or am I taking on way too many things and then beating myself up at the end of the week because I didn't do all those things?
That is a good question. And you've mentioned self-kindness a couple of times, and I want to dive into that, especially for folks that have double book schedules, and to them maybe self-kindness looks a little bit like sleeping 6 hours. So how can we incorporate self-kindness in our schedule and our practice if it's something that we're not really familiar with?
Yeah. So it's just the idea of going a little more gentle in the way you're talking to yourself about things you need to do and treating how you're treating your own body. And so I have a chapter in my book called Self-Care is Non-Negotiable. And I really want people to start framing it this way. So it's not just something, oh, I'll rest when I get around to it, or I'll take a break whenever the work's done. we're always sort of pushing it to the side. And this is like pushing our own needs to the side on a weekly basis. So when I have people map out their time, I make self-care a priority. How are you taking care of yourself? How are you being kind to yourself? And by self-care, people have a lot of different ideas of what that looks like. Often people say, well, that's like going to the spa or having a nice night out. Those are all nice things. But when I talk about self-care, what I'm really talking about is how are we bringing our stress down each week intentionally? Like, what are activities you do that really bring your stress down, that work to give you that sense of relief from the stress that builds up from all the other stuff you're doing? So that could be going for a walk or journaling or exercising or whatever works for your particular brain and body. So part of it is about getting really honest with yourself about what things do I do where I actually feel a little relief from stress? And how can I do those things more deliberately to regulate my stress as it's rising throughout the week? So we kind of make that one of our main goals, is taking care of ourselves and seeing it as more important to do.
That's such a great chapter. I'm sure it's one everyone's going to have dog-eared all over.
I hope so. I really do, because we often see self-care as damage control, and I'm trying to differentiate that, right? Like, it shouldn't be something you do when you're already burnt out and fried and exhausted to the point of now you're doing damage control. Now you're sick, or now you have to take a day off work just because you're that exhausted. That's more like damage control. Regular self-care should look like soothing yourself and taking care of yourself and saying, hey, take that 10-minute break and just sit there and let your brain rest or recuperate, or go for that little walk outside to shake things up for your brain a little bit, to give you something else to do that isn't stressful, right? This is a way we show ourselves kindness. And if you practice this over time, what happens is your whole relationship with time starts to shift. You start to create more time for yourself. It feels like time is stretching, because the calmer we feel, the more time we seem to have. So in a way, slowing down on purpose, taking care of ourselves, taking breaks when we need to, we end up creating more time to be productive when we need to be productive.
So, to dovetail with that, I mean, we are in a world filled with distractions. I mean,
Yeah.
there's distractions on everything. So, how can someone stay focused on their most important goals while really kind of not getting overwhelmed by all the chatter?
Yeah, there really is so much stimulation coming at us. So I think I have people map stuff out on paper. I have my first tool in the book is called goal mapping, and it's creating a visual map for yourself across different areas you want to work on for the month. So that when you're writing it out on paper, you're kind of funneling these big goals down into little easy steps. And I really, really, really encourage people to use a pen and paper. They've done so many neuroscience studies when people write stuff out on paper with a pen, they're using more complicated regions of their brain than even just typing or using an app. It helps us remember, and it helps us show our brain the steps we need to take to do the things we want to do each month. So what I have people do is they make 3 columns. One of those columns I have them call self-care, because it's all about maintaining our balance and well-being. So you put stuff on there like things you're going to do each week to bring your stress down, and you give yourself a number of choices. And then the other 2 columns I leave up to the individual person. They can call them whatever they want. Usually it's something like work goals, creative goals, household goals, relationships. It varies from person to person. But then across those tracks, we're breaking it down into tangible, easy goal steps that we can take this month to move those things forward a little bit. So I'm a big believer that small steps add up, and the smaller and easier you make the step for your brain to do, the less overwhelm you feel. So back to your point, we're all feeling very overwhelmed right now by so much stimulation and information and news and scrolling and all this stuff. Our brains are really stressed out most of the time, and making decisions is very hard for many of us to do because we're so overwhelmed. That breaking things down on paper into tiny little easy steps is a way that you can help your brain and be kinder to your brain to understand what the next step forward is for you.
I love that. I never knew that about writing things down. I always go, oh, I'm just going to type it into my notes app.
Yeah.
And making that connection, I love how that really makes things, it really kind of solidifies things in many ways.
Well, if you think about it, in school, many of us took notes and remembered stuff by writing it down, right? So something about writing it activates the memory part of our brain that might not be perking up when we're just putting it in our phone. Another thing with a lot of people I work with is if they can see it, they do it. And sometimes when we're putting everything on apps in our phone, it's just getting buried and we're not looking at it enough to remember to do it. So sometimes writing it out on paper, writing those first steps you're going to take on a Post-it and then sticking it on your computer or somewhere you're visually going to see it is that cue to do it. It tells your brain to do it, right? And if you're burying it in a notebook or even in a drawer or on your computer or on your phone, we're not getting that visual cue to act, to move forward.
So, how about for those folks? I'm sure you have tips and you've done so much great research for this book, but perhaps you have tips for those folks that feel like they're constantly busy or they never complete things.
Yeah.
What would you say to that?
So in my book, I kind of go through all the practical tools, but at the end of the book, it's about showing yourself proof that you've done stuff and acknowledging what you've done. And it's the idea of we all want to feel happy and done with our to-do list. And what we're doing a lot is we're doing the things and we're going through the motions, but we're not emotionally connecting with anything we've just done. We're not giving ourselves credit emotionally for what we want to do. And the thing about goals is it's not really so much about doing the thing that we're after, it's about what we want to feel from doing the thing. So, first of all, it's acknowledging what do I want to feel by doing this goal? Let's say I want to write a book. Well, what do I want to feel when I complete that book? And it's walking ourselves through the practice of where am I trying to go? What is my emotional destination? And then every step I take towards writing that book, like every little tiny step I'm doing each week, I remind myself, oh, I'm doing this to feel better or to help people, or I want to connect with the feeling of being proud when I finish that little step. So I have a phrase, we have to practice the feelings we want to feel in little steps so that we can feel them in big doses when we do the big things later. We have to practice those emotions. And a lot of the times what we're doing is we're doing our goals and we're practicing is being stressed out so that when we accomplish the big goal, that's all we feel at the end of it is stress, right? And we want the opposite of that. We want to feel proud. We want to feel happy. We want to feel relief that it's done. So we have to practice those things in little weekly steps as we're doing them. And one of the main tricks I have is to start a small steps journal, which is like a bullet journal where every day you're writing down 3 tiny things in just a bullet list. It's not like a diary format. It's just 3 little dots and you're writing, I wrote 1 page of my book, or I did this radio interview, or I, finished the laundry for the week, or whatever you're tracking as your main goals. You're writing whatever tiny little step you took that day. And if you do this daily and force yourself to read it at the end of the month, what it does is paint a picture of your own progress where you're showing yourself proof of what you did. And it really helps you start to feel proud of yourself more consistently.
I love that. That's such great advice. What would you like readers and our listeners to take away from your book?
If all you take away from my book is just be a little kinder to yourself each week, then that's enough. That's enough of a paradigm shift to start to change your relationship with yourself, your time, and your goals. Just Go a little gentler on yourself. Talk to yourself in a kinder way. Look at your weekly schedule through a self-kindness lens. How much can I take on? How much energy do I actually have? And how can I be a little kinder to myself this week?
Risa, I understand you also have your own show. I'd love to hear about it.
So I have my own podcast called The Motivation Mindset. It's great. I feature experts from all over the world who specialize in time management, stress reduction tools. And what it provides is each episode, we try to give listeners 3 to 5 practical tools that they can practice at home for bringing their stress down and getting stuff done. So check it out. I have lots of fun people from all over the world talking about things they've learned from their own lives and things they've mastered about time management.
And where can listeners connect with you and be part of your community and learn more about your work?
So I would love for you guys to visit risawilliams.com. You can find all my books there, my podcast, the workshops I do, and the appearances I do. It's risawilliams.com, or you can follow me on Instagram at Risa Williams Therapy. I give a lot of free books away there, so please check it out.
Well, Risa, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Thank you so much. It was such a pleasure talking to you today.
Well, thank you, Risa. It's been such an honor to spend this time with you and to talk about your new book, Get Stuff Done Without the Stress. 5 Secrets for Making the Best Use of Your Time and Achieving Your Goals for Greater Happiness. Get Stuff Done Without the Stress is available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and everywhere books are sold. And remember, support our indie bookstores. If you don't see it on the shelf, just ask for them to order it. And make sure to connect with Risa on her website at risawilliams.com, be part of her community, and learn more about her work. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne, where we make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary. A recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.